Hello, welcome to English American Literature 2, Unit 12, Macbeth 2. In this unit, we have outlined the main events, analyzed the key events, and have an understanding of the motives of the characters. Now we will analyze the acts one by one. Let's start with the first act. The play opens with the three witches who plan to meet Macbeth. That the play opens with the three witches is significant because it shows that the humans are in the hands of the supernatural powers. Second scene moves to the battlefield where King Duncan is informed that his army led by Macbeth defeated the rebels. The king appoints Macbeth as a Thane of Cawdor. Macbeth in this scene is presented as a noble character and a brave soldier. In scene 3, Macbeth and Banquo see the three witches and they hail Macbeth as the Thane of Cawdor and the future king. And Duncan will also have a smaller and a greater feature. The scene is important because it is in this scene that the witches plant the first seeds of ambition in Macbeth's heart. And it also foreshadows the upcoming events. In scene 4, Duncan shows his gratitude for his subjects and announces his son Malcolm as the future king. Macbeth begins planning to kill Duncan. Here, we just realize that the scene is important because Duncan is a rightful king and he has a poor sense of judgment. Macbeth's ambition cannot be seen by the king. Scene 5 introduces another significant character, Lady Macbeth. She reads the letter from Macbeth, yet she is afraid that Macbeth is too tender-hearted to kill Duncan, so she starts manipulating Macbeth. The scene introduces Lady Macbeth as a very powerful female character and more ambitious than Macbeth. In scene 6, Duncan and followers enter Macbeth's castle and are welcomed by Lady Macbeth. Here, Banquo is presented as a noble character. Scene 7 presents Macbeth doubtful about killing Duncan, but again Lady Macbeth manages to persuade him to kill Duncan by planning every single detail. The scene is significant in that Lady Macbeth is presented as more powerful one in the marriage, and she is also very ambitious, and she insults Macbeth for not being courageous enough. The scene establishes the conflict of the play. Now let's have a look at Act 2. The first scene of the second act introduces Macbeth and Banquo. They talk about the witches and the prophecies. When Banquo leaves, Macbeth sees a bloody dagger. He takes this as a call for duty and goes to kill Duncan. In this scene, Banquo is presented as an intuitive and a noble character who somehow senses Macbeth's evil plans. The next significant thing in this act is the Bloody Dagger, the image of the Bloody Dagger, because this dagger symbolizes Macbeth's mental distress that he will suffer during the rest of the play. In scene 2, Macbeth kills Duncan but is very distressed and thinks he also killed Sleep. Lady Macbeth accuses him for being weak and tries to take control. This scene presents the beginning of Macbeth's madness. He is unable to bear the consequences of his actions. However, Lady Macbeth is far more controlled than him and is able to mask her distress. In scene 3, everybody learns that Duncan is killed and everybody laments the death of the king. Macbeth kills the chamberlains. Malcolm and Donalbain escape because they feel threatened. The significance of the scene lies in the fact that even nature responds to the murder of the king. Moreover, Macbeth seems to have masked his fear and now is becoming more violent, whereas Lady Macbeth is becoming weaker. In the last scene of the second act, Macbeth is crowned as the king, and Malcolm and Donalbain are held responsible for the murder of the king. Macduff also leaves Macbeth. When we come to Act 3, at the beginning of the first scene of Act 3, Banquo speculates about his own future because the prophecies of the witches have become true. Lady Macbeth and Macbeth enter as the king and queen, and Macbeth invites Banquo for the feast. After Banquo leaves, he plans to murder Banquo and his son Fleance to secure his position as the future king. The scene presents Macbeth as a bloody king who is ready to kill even the ones who are close to him. In the second scene, Lady Macbeth complains that she is not happy although she has become the queen. She also realizes that Macbeth is uneasy but still tries to soothe him. The scene marks a transformation both in Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. Whereas Macbeth is becoming a bloody murderer, Lady Macbeth loses the confidence that she had at the beginning of the play. In the third scene, Banquo is murdered and Fleance manages to escape. Fleance's escape will cause more murders in the future. In the fourth scene, Macbeth prepares a feast but is disturbed by the ghost of Banquo. Lady Macbeth sends the guests away. Macbeth decides to visit the witches the next day to learn more about the future. In this scene, Macbeth is on the brink of madness. The death of his victims do not bring peace, and he just is disturbed by their visions. Lady Macbeth in this scene seems to be strong for the very last time. The next scene introduces the three witches who meet Hecate, the goddess of the witches. Hecate is angry because the witches did not tell her that they were planning a trick on Macbeth, so she just declares that she will play a final trick on Macbeth. In the last scene of Act III, Lennox informs the reader about what has happened to some characters and tells that everyone is suspecting Macbeth of killing Duncan. We also learn that Malcolm and Macduff are planning to dethrone Macbeth. When we come to Act IV begins with the witches preparing the final trick for Macbeth. Macbeth enters and questions the witches about his features. The witches tell him some prophecies. When Macbeth wants to ask them more questions, he sees the ghosts of 8 kings who seem to be the descendants of Banquo. Macbeth leaves vowing to kill Macduff and his family. The scene demonstrates how humans are in the hands of the supernatural powers and how Macbeth loses all his control. In the second scene, Macduff's family is destroyed. This scene especially shows the intensity of Macbeth's cruelty because he even kills the young son. The last scene moves to England where Macduff persuades Malcolm to come back to Scotland and dethrone Macbeth. He also learns that his family is murdered by Macbeth. He vows revenge. In this scene, both Macduff and Malcolm are presented as royal and noble characters who are ready to do anything to save their country. And when we come to the last act begins with Lady Macbeth losing her sanity. She walks in her sleep and acts as if she is washing her hands. The ones around her are very anxious about her well-being. Here, the guilt of Lady Macbeth overcomes her, and the blood that she feels on her hands symbolizes her guilty conscience. The second scene prepares the upcoming war against Macbeth. The third scene moves to Macbeth's castle, where Macbeth relies on the prophecies made by the witches and prepares for war. Despite all the lack of political and military support, he is determined not to surrender. In the fourth scene, Macbeth hears the news and realizes that he was tricked by the witches. He also learns that Lady Macbeth is dead. The scene is perhaps one of the most important scenes of the play because the insensitive response that Macbeth gives upon hearing the death of Lady Macbeth demonstrates how cruel he has become and how he lost his sanity. He also questions the meaninglessness of life. In the following scene, Malcolm arrives and the battle begins in the seventh scene. Macbeth feels entrapped and kills young Seward. Macduff vows revenge. The eighth scene presents the battle between Macduff and Macbeth. Macbeth doesn't believe that Macduff is going to kill him because the prophecies told him that he will not be killed by a man born of a woman. However, Macduff kills him, saying that he was taken out of the womb of his mother early. The scene makes it clear that Macbeth is blinded by his ambition, and in the final scene of the play, Malcolm is restored to the throne. These two last scenes can be presented as poetic justice. Good are rewarded, bad are punished.